Something I hear all the time in my community is, I used to play Smash Bros. And gave Rivals 2 a try. I loved it so much, but I'm not sure if I want to pick up Rivals 1. Since it's no longer getting major updates, it just got a minor one a few weeks ago, and the competitive circuit is all over. While this sentiment is accurate, I think it holds people back from checking out one of the best platform fighters ever created. Today, I'll be breaking down why I think the original Rivals of Aether is still a great purchase in 2025, even with Rivals 2 already out and in full live service. We'll start with looking at the base roster and general gameplay. Then we'll talk about the different game modes that are great for casuals, and finally we'll end on the Steam Workshop. If there's a certain topic you're really invested in though, I've left timestamps all throughout the video, so feel free to skip around. Looking at the Rivals of Aether cast, we have a pretty big variety in fighters right off the bat. Obviously, characters featured in Rivals 2, like Clarin, Zetterburn, Rano, and Raster are all here. But truthfully, the characters in Rivals 2 are the most standard ones from the Rivals of Aether cast. It's pretty obvious that the devs wanted the base roster of Rivals 2 to be the most essential, standard fighters in the game, since having a good base roster is easier to build off of than vice versa. However, I would argue that this has left the current Rivals 2 cast to be a lot more mellow than what we have cooking up here in the original Rivals. Characters like Eliana and Sylvanos, and even Absa, all have unique ways to control the stage and match tempo. For example, Sylvanos' grass and seeds allow him to set up traps to use later, or to simply continue and extend combos where he wouldn't be able to without it. And Eliana's Steam and Bomb allow her to stuff out movement and make projectiles that would normally end a combo turn into a combo extender or a kill confirm option. Absa has her Cloud, which can be placed anywhere on the stage and then used as a trap or as a hitbox extender for her Fair, Bear, and Dare, which work kinda like Zelda's moves. I'm really simplifying things here since all the fighters in Rivals 1 have so much more depth to them that becomes clear the more you play each character, since they're all designed with a low skill floor in mind, but have so much depth that their skill ceiling is nearly unlimited. We've barely scratched the surface on the base roster, however, since that's just 3 of the 7 characters that aren't in Rivals 2 yet. Olympia, our newest character in Rivals 2, came from a group known as the Workshop 4. These 4 fighters were picked out by the dev team and implemented into the main game, from the Workshop. Malo, Palm, Hodan, and as we've already mentioned, Olympia, are known for having incredibly diverse and creative kits. Malo has 4 different bombs, and each of his moves throws or combos into a throw of a bomb in different ways, allowing for huge combo strings, traps, and custom kill options. This makes him really expressive, and I love to play him in Rivals 1, even though I'm not very good with him. Palm has a Peach-esque float, strong ladder combos with both her back air and up air, as well as a Mario Fireball-esque projectile that knocks enemies upwards. What's really neat about these, however, is that she can hold 4 of them at once and even auto-fire them after she shoots out the first one, allowing her to not only extend combos, but also mix up her neutral. Did I mention that her down B is a field that lets her float wherever she wants in it, letting her gain insane movement tech and catapult herself around the stage, or to recover? And finally, to cap us all off on the Workshop 4, we have Hodan. Hodan has some of the craziest tech of them all, being able to make little smoke clones from Steam all over the stage. These interact with his buttons in different ways, allowing him to both mix up his approach options based on what he's previously set up, but he also has a unique input mechanic, allowing the player to press down before pressing an input to get an altered version of a move. A lot of times the move gets stronger, but sometimes it changes how the move combos or where the move hits. Sometimes it also makes Hodan kind of bounce around and move weird, which lets him adapt to each situation as he sees fit. Of course, there's also Olympia in this group, who's a slower brawler with lots of movement tech and endless combos, but I think most of you guys already know a lot about her since she's already in Rivals 2. If not though, I'll leave my links to her guide that you can check out right now. To wrap up our base cast, we obviously have 2 guest characters being Shovel Knight and Ori. Both of these fighters are super unique, with Shovel Knight being able to change up his kit mid-match and edit what armor he's wearing for different benefits, and Ori, who's known to have super explosive combos and ledge guarding. These both stand out as really cool designs in the base cast, at least in my opinion. However, we've been told they sadly won't be returning in Rivals 2. However, we do know from dev interviews that the devs would like to salvage their favorite parts of each character kit and port them into Rivals 2, just on a different character. So don't be scared to try these two out, since you might not think they would be in Rivals 2, parts of them will. These incredibly expressive and varied kits can only be found in Rivals 1, however, since at the time of this video, these characters haven't been added to the sequel just yet. They're all a lot of fun, and I suggest new players to try all of them. I'd like to make a new player guide to the original Rivals eventually, so if that's something you want to see on the channel sooner than later, let me know. Before I move on to the rest of the video, by the way, it'd mean the world to me if you took a second to subscribe. I'm putting out 2 videos a week talking about Rivals of Aether, and I've got a lot of really cool events and content coming up since I'm finally off college for summer break. Back to the video though, you're probably thinking, these characters sound crazy. Why would I want to play a game with insane character design? Wouldn't that be annoying? And to be honest, it's really not. Rivals of Aether is a lot faster paced than Rivals 2, due to the lack of shields and increased movement abilities like Drift DI. Tools like Malo's Bomb, Palm's Music Note, and Eliana's missiles are all really easy to counter with an easy frame 3 parry by simply hitting them while they're setting them up, or with increased movement options like I mentioned before. This freedom of movement is what allows Rivals 1 to be so quick and creative, since instead of hiding behind a shield, you're prompted to dodge moves with more skillful and precise movements, instead of a simple hold to block option. This can definitely be tricky to get down at first, as you learn each move's threat range, but once you get going, it feels great. On top of that, dodging moves is rewarded by a mechanic known as whiff lag. You've probably heard this mechanic being discussed for Rivals 2 before, I know I've talked about it on this channel. But in case you haven't, the idea is that moves have extra ending lag on them when whiffed. This allows players to easily string together creative combos on hit, but discourages players from mashing moves in neutral, due to the lack of shield. I'd argue this is one of the most interesting mechanics in any plat fighter, and genuinely makes the lack of shields feel like a big step up from other games. Obviously, this isn't to everyone's taste, but it's rare that a game tackles a genre by removing a genre staple and gets it right. Another staple of Rivals of Aether is Hitfall. Obviously, this mechanic is in Rivals 2, but it's a lot faster in 1. This makes combos more expressive and allows moves to transfer from ground to air to back to ground again seamlessly. Speaking of seamless, Drift DI makes transitioning from neutral to disadvantage a dream. Drift DI makes it so you always have control of both DI and your air drift even after being hit, while in hit stun, making disadvantage more expressive than pretty much any other plat fighter, and challenging the player pushing advantage to mix their combos up to continue it. Our last, but certainly not least feature of Rivals of Aether unique to Rivals is the lack of ledges. Ledges make up a lot of the offstage gameplay in most plat fighters, whether you're recovering to the ledge or trying to keep your opponent away from it. The lack of ledges, however, make recovering a lot riskier in Rivals of Aether, speeding up offstage interactions and giving real value to choosing to ledge trap over ledge guard in scenarios where it'd be the other way around in most plat fighters. This makes recovering more expressive and committal, since finding a way to make it back to stage means you also have to find a way to safely make it past your opponent. You've got a lot of tools for this, however, since every character can wall jump out of their up B to gain it back again, giving each fighter lots of resources and ways to poke at opponents from offstage. Regrettably, this can lead to ledge trappers feeling like they hold all the cards and the player recovering has none. But as I got better at the game, I realized it's not that black and white. If you're having trouble with this, I suggest mixing up your recovery. Not only how you land on stage, but also how you use things like up B and wall jump off stage. I like to jump from the wall and then wave dash on the stage with a jab, similar to ledge dashes in Rivals 2. That just about wraps up all the unique mechanics in Rivals of Aether, and it was a lot, but don't worry, there's fully comprehensive, playable tutorials going over every mechanic you need to know in the game. They range from being super easy in teaching you basic movement, to showing you how to properly DI combos and kill moves to survive longer. It's really great for players coming from a more casual background or just starting out. They also have individual guides for each character at tons of different levels of gameplay, so if you have a question about a character, you can always check it out there, it's really comprehensive. Speaking of things, however, that are great for casual players though, let's take a look at the different game modes for players to try that aren't just competitive. The first standard PvP mode is Tetherball. You've probably never seen a game mode like this, but it's a lot of fun. It's playable both online and in person, and it's also great for teams. It's a big twist on the normal plat fighter formula, since in this game mode your goal isn't necessarily to take stocks or to get a kill, but instead to wrap the ball all the way around the goalpost, or have it wrapped to your favor when the timer runs out. There's a lot of crazy strategies you can employ in this mode, and you can even host a tournament out of it. I ran as a side event at a few locals, and players found characters like Ori, Shovel Knight, and Sylvanos to be really strong, even if they normally played other characters in the standard PvP mode. Overall, Tetherball won't make or break this game for casual players, but it's a great side mode and I've personally had a lot of fun with it. One of the more standard single player modes is the story mode. This mode is pretty similar to what you'd get in classic Smash Bros, but it's got a story and lore to boot. Truthfully, this mode doesn't have a ton of content, but there's a speedrun ladder in-game for it, and the story is really fun to play through, since it gives characters a cool background and a lot of personality. There's only a few characters that have routes in it, and overall it's pretty small, but it'd be a disservice not to mention it here. For our last mode, we have Abyss. Abyss is personally my favorite of this list, and acts like a roguelike-esque game that you're meant to play over and over to fully unlock all of its content. Each round you play has challenges like kill a bunch of weak enemies, stay in the light, and don't touch the ground. As you complete these challenges, you gain points, which you can then use to buy new abilities and upgrades for your characters at different levels. These upgrades make fighting the bosses and completing the challenges a lot easier, but are most fun in goofy PvP modes. Being able to customize your character and crack them out is frankly a ton of fun, and super unserious. I think this casual minigame mode is super underappreciated, and in my opinion is by far one of the biggest standouts in Rivals 1, at least to me. Moving on to our final topic, and the most important one for why you should give Rivals of Aether a try, is the Steam Workshop. I plan on doing a dedicated video about the workshop sometime coming up soon, but Steam Workshop adds so much free content to the game, with endless possibilities. There's competitively viable characters that people use in workshop brackets, and characters that completely ignore balance as a whole, and lean more into being insane and funny. There's even new custom stages and game modes that can be downloaded. I really like the Beyblade character personally, he's really funny, goofy, and fun. It completely changes up the dynamic of a plat fighter to the point that it doesn't even really feel like I'm playing Rivals of Aether anymore. Some of my favorite characters, however, were the ones from the workshop contest held about a year ago. Creators got to submit fighters to Aether Studios for a chance to get them included in Rivals 2 as a future DLC character. Lorena won, and she was one of my favorites, but Badra and Wern both stood out to me as being super interesting as well. Frankly, I could go on for a lot longer about the workshop, but as I said, I want to do a whole video on this topic, and do a deep dive into my favorite content there in a future video. So if you have a favorite workshop character or mod, feel free to drop it in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to include it in the next video coming up soon. To answer our original question, is Rivals of Aether worth getting into in 2025? My answer is obviously yes. The game has so much content for casual players just looking to have a good time. And there's still an active Wi-Fi scene with decent-sized online events across the country throughout the years. Regrettably, I wouldn't recommend getting into it as your primary competitive game of choice, since Rivals 2 is a lot more populated currently, but just from Steam charts alone, Rivals 1 is clearly far from dead. So it's definitely a possibility to pick up the game and still compete. I'd personally like to run some tournaments coming up for it in the future, but I'm not too sure on exact dates yet, so keep your eyes open. There's so much in Rivals 1 to discover and explore, and it shakes up the platfighter genre on its head, just enough to not feel so different from the platfighters you're probably familiar with, but also different enough to stand out as a unique and completely new experience. Before you go, I want to thank you for watching until the end, and invite you to fill out my form ranking your stages from favorite to least favorite in Rivals 2. It's linked below in the description and will only take a minute or two. I think it'd be cool to compile this data from my community and use it to guess what stages might be rotated out sometime next year whenever new ones are added in. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now!